And we are live. I believe we are. Let me validate it. Using a new tool, so I just want to be sure that everything is working as it is supposed to. Yeah, good, perfect. So we're live. Awesome. So this is a session that I wanted to do for a long time. Those live are going to happen like quite often now. I'm going to try to do them every week. The goal of those lives is to show basically everything that you should learn about Claude, how it is evolving and everything, and how to use AI. So I'm starting from the beginning. I did a day, like I'm doing like a series, which is 43 days on LinkedIn, where I explain basically from the beginning on how you should use Claude, right? So this session is basically where do you start? You have never set up Claude, potentially you have never paid for it, or you were in Gemini or you were in ChatGPT, and you want to switch to Claude because you heard a lot of things about it. One of the things that I just want to explain is that I'm going to try to tell you, obviously, the differences, for example, between Claude and between ChatGPT in this session. But I am better at Claude because it's a tool that I want to master, so it's the one that I'm focusing my time. However, this is from beginner perspective, so which is even if you have never used it, it's something that you can use. Now, I think that if you want to chat with me, I think you can directly if you want to ask me any question. I will keep some time at the end for any question, but I think if you go through the chats directly, it will work. I hope it will work. I should receive something in the public chat, but we will see. We'll see how it goes. So one of the things I want to show you, when you start with Claude, there is a lot of things that you should understand. And so one of the first things you should understand is how it works, right? So let me share my screen and I will explain to you the differences that you can see, in Claude itself. So let me start from there. So currently you can see my Claude. Hey, Zandy. Thank you for saying hi on the chat. Nice to see you. So right now you can see my Claude. This is what I'm sharing. So this is my space where basically I'm working, okay? And so there is two main things that you can see at the top, which is basically whether it's home, where you have basically your chats, and you have also the space for Cowork, okay? And I'm gonna explain the differences. And you have at the top code, okay? So this is where you can use Claude Code. One of the space you can use Claude Code. You can use also Claude Code in your terminal. And this is where I use Claude Code most of the time. And there is a live that is just for that on how do you install Claude Code in your terminal. Where we're going to spend most of our time, it's here, okay? Because we want to set that up. We want to set that up for a simple reason. You have to understand that AI is not as smart as we think. And one of the things that we should know is that AI has basically amnesia. AI is not has not like a memory that is infinite. It's not capable to remember things that are quite old. And so you need to go really to understand how it works to be able to use it as much as possible or as you would like to do it, right? And so there is two things that we're going to look at. First of all is the memory that is basically inside Claude in general. So for Claude Chat and also for Claude Cowork. And then we're going to go at a deeper level where we're going to understand basically the memory layers, so the different layers of the memory, and also how the contexts work and how you can set that up for you to be able to use it as its maximum. So the first thing that I all want you to do, and it's a setting that I say that people should have, is that when you go to settings, so here at the bottom left corner, you will be able to see all your settings about Claude, right? So I'm paying, so in my billing, you will see like the usage I do, you'll see like the usage that I'm doing right now, you'll see like, for example, the capability. So for example, in there is some stuff that are really interesting, like having the connector search, so which means that it's capable to look in the connectors directory to use the relevant tool for the conversation. Switch models when a message is flagged. This is especially new since Fable 5 because Fable has this tendency of flagging some security issues in the messages. So you can switch the model that you want to use. And then you have Claude Cowork and Claude Code here. But the most important thing for us today is the memory, what is here. In the memory, there is different options that you have to use. So the first one is search and reference chat. This, when you set that up on, it allows Claude to look at all the chats that you have had in the past. So it's really important that this is turned on. Why? Because let's say, for example, you start a chat and you discuss about a strategy around building a product or building a website or building your brand. And then 2 weeks later, you close that chat. 2 weeks later, you start a new chat and you say, okay, like now I want to do a newsletter. Okay? You don't want to have to repeat everything that you have said in another chat, right? What you would like Claude to do is basically go and search through his history to be able to find the other chat that are relevant to what you're talking about. And so this is what this one is used for. The second one is generate memory from chat. This is also important because basically if this is turned off, what happens is that as you have chats with Claude, it will not update its memory. It's not something you control, so you can't really know what it's putting inside its memory. But at least when you're having this conversation, the memory of Claude will update with information that you're giving to it. Okay? So that's the two most important things. Then afterwards, there is everything around you, the topics, the areas of interest that you have, but also the importation. Okay? So one other thing that I want to do is explain to you how memory works. Because if this is not clear, it's going to be really hard for you to understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. And as I said to you, we're taking it from the beginning. So the goal is that it's beginner friendly. Any question that you have, you can ask me. And the goal is that this will also allow you in 1 hour to get like one really complex or potentially complex, course. So let me just do this. Let me try to find the one that I'm creating right now. Just Claude session. Enter. Where is it? Okay. So let me just share that on my screen. And so that way you will be capable to see this. No. Okay, so what you have to understand about the way Claude works and the way the memory works is that basically you have different layers where you can talk to Claude, right? So the first layer that we have here is the memory. Okay, so this is the first layer. This is what's inside Claude. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit so that way you can see a bit better. What you have to understand is that here the memory, this is controlled by the AI model. So whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's Claude, whether it's Gemini, this is controlled by the AI model. It means that we don't know exactly how they put stuff in memory. What we can do is go to the settings, for example, it's the same for ChatGPT, and see what is in memory, okay? There is also something else that you can do is that you can ask directly inside Claude or inside ChatGPT, what do you know about me? This will tell you, based on the chats that you have, what Claude or what ChatGPT has retained about yourself, okay? Then afterwards, there is everything around context. And this, if you want, is what we could say that is a second layer of memory. This context is given by you. Giving you an example, you start a chat, Claude ChatGPT knows a lot of stuff about you. Suddenly you're going to say something like, I'm working on this project for a client in London. This client is a dentist, and what they would like me to work on is a strategy of communication for their website and their social media. Everything that is all the information about the dentist, the fact that it's London and all that, and what you're working on, it's context. Okay? And so this is something that you give. It's not part of the prompting, it's what goes with the prompting. Okay? And so the last layer is everything around prompting. Okay? And so the prompting is that once you have given the context, once you have your memory, is for example to say, now I want to produce a strategy that will help them grow their fan base by 20%. I want you to act as an expert, and I want you to give me the step-by-step approach that you will use. And finally, I want you to produce a PowerPoint as an output that I can present to them. Okay, this is the prompting. So what is interesting is that obviously the memory is controlled by the AI. And so you have, if I could say like partial, you have partial oversight in there. Everything that is around prompting and context, it's in your control. Okay? And so these 3 layers is the 3 layers that we play, whether we are in Claude, whether in ChatGPT, or whether in Gemini. Okay? Every AI works approximately the same way, with more details in certain things, but this is approximately how it works. Okay, so understanding that is understanding generally, what you can do with things. Now, we have to understand a second thing is how, because we're going to talk more specifically about Claude and about ChatGPT, is that you have different layers also in Claude and in ChatGPT. So if we talk about Claude, and we're going to talk about this first, which is the first thing we're going to talk about. So if you imagine that this box is Claude, okay, you can imagine that inside Claude, there is a general memory. Okay. Then after that, in Claude, there is different product. I'm just going to talk about the 2 main products that we're gonna use today, which is Chat and Cowork. Okay. There is a difference between these 2 products. Chat lives in the cloud. So which means that everything that you do in Chat, you can find it on your phone. You can use it the way you want. You can create projects. So there is also projects in Chat. Okay. You can imagine that as folders that exist basically in the cloud, but you can access it and you can do whatever you want. Okay. Cowork is a little bit different because Cowork it's partially on your computer. So the difference between Cowork and Chat is that Chat can't access your computer, and so the files that are on it, where Cowork can access your files if you give access, obviously. But that's the main difference between the 2. This is why there is a lot of people, for example, that like to work in Cowork right now, because since Cowork is capable to access your files, it means that you can create more intelligence, you can give more memory, you can give more context. And when you start prompting, it's better, okay? Because you can do things that are more complex. Chat, as I say, is different. Chat doesn't access your files, which means that everything that you want it to know, you have to give it. Okay, you can give any file you want. You can give Word documents, you can give PDF documents, you can give images, everything that you want to give to the chat, you can. But it's the big difference between the two. Sorry, I just wanted to drink a little bit. Now, in chat and in Cowork, you have to understand that both use the general memory. So everything that you say about you, they both use the general memory. Now there is a small, now afterwards, there is another layer. I just want to get that off because I want to explain that again. In chat, okay, you can have like independent chats. So this is 1, 2, 3. And so all of this, basically it's the same for Cowork. You can have chats here. Okay? Those chats, basically, have also a memory. They have a context. It's a context window. So what you can imagine is each time you start a chat, and I will explain that after, you charge obviously the memory, you charge all, the past history that you had, part of it, and then you load also everything that you had in context. Okay, so when you start a new chat, when, for example, let me just share my screen differently, but when I go, for example, here, and I start a new chat here, and I decide whether it's chat or Cowork, as you can see, the difference that I was telling you, chat, you don't have this project place, you don't have this folder that exists inside your computer. You can give files, you can add to a project. This is something I'm going to explain. You can add from GitHub, you can use Scale, you can do web search, you can research. But basically, here you start from fresh, just with a memory that you have inside, Claude. If you're in Cowork, as you can see here, I can add a project or a folder. And those projects, as you can see, exist on my computer. So it's totally different the way it works, right? Here again, I can obviously add, create new project, add folders, so which means that I can add as many folders as I want that exist on my computer. And in the same way, I can also add files and other stuff like this. Okay? But if I start from there and I start from nothing, it will be exactly the same thing. I will get the memory from Claude. There is a layer that we can go a bit further. And so this is something I'm going to explain underneath. You have here, as I said, the general memory. You have, for example, here, we're going to put it like this, which is your computer with your files. So this, we can consider that it's your memory plus context. But then there is another layer that you can access. And so whether you're in Claude Chat or Claude Cowork, you can create projects. Projects, you have to imagine them as a container that is logic. So you can imagine them as a logic container. And this, just to let you know, exists also in ChatGPT. Okay, you can also create projects in ChatGPT. The difference between ChatGPT and Claude is the way they organize their project and the way they consider their project. In ChatGPT, okay, so here, you have two ways to create a project, whether you use default memory, whether you use project memory. Okay? So when you create the project in ChatGPT, you choose one of the two. Once it's chosen, you can't change it. And this is one of the reasons, for example, I don't use ChatGPT and I prefer to use Claude. The way Claude works is that when it starts a project, you have a memory layer that is here. You have context layer, and you have what you call instruction. Once you start a chat in this project, this chat will take as a beginning the memory, the context, and the instruction of this project. Okay? So which means that starting a chat inside this container will stay separate from the rest of the memory and will take only what you have given there. If I show you that, what does it look like? If I create a new project, for example, you will see that I name the project, okay? And I can choose what I do with it. I can choose the folder. And if you want to look what a project looks like, here you have one of my projects. In this project, as you can see, I have chats. I have instructions that are here. And I'm going to explain to you how to create those instructions. I have memory that is created just for this project. Okay? And I have here the context, and in the context, I can give whether, folders, I can give files, depending on if I create a project for chat or if I create a project for Claude. Okay? So that's the main differences that you have to understand, okay, from the beginning. So if I come back, the way the memory works and the way when you talk in a chat, there is different layers, right? So you have a memory layer. So this is what is controlled by the AI model, and this is what is loaded. Then after that, you have a context and the prompt. Prompt and context, this is what you control. The way the memory is created and the way that is updated, this is not something you control. It's controlled by the model. However, you can have partial oversight, which by the settings that I showed you, you can check the memory and you can update it. Okay? So if we come back to that, just about the memory, and we go from the beginning, if I go from a chat, I can say, what do you know about me? What is inside your memory? Okay? So if I start that in the chat, I can basically ask that. And so you will see what has been created. Okay? So you will see that, who you are, UK-based education entrepreneur, running your own limited company, the Forge is your pay circle. So everything is around like what he knows about me. So this is everything that has been downloaded in the memory itself. Okay? Now, second thing that is important to understand is that you have two main products inside Claude that share this general memory, the chat and Cowork. Okay? Cowork, difference between the two. Chat is in the cloud, can't access the files inside your computer. You can upload your files, but it doesn't access directly, for example, the folder. Where Cowork, for example, you can give access to a full folder and you can have access to it and you can see the files and you can create files. That's the main difference. Now, third thing to understand is that on top of a general memory, what you have in Claude and also in ChatGPT is that you can create projects. Okay, so this is Claude. Sorry for the. So exactly the same thing here. This is project number 2, right? Project number 2. And the projects act as logic containers. So it's really easy to understand if you're technical, because you can imagine that you create your project based on what you're working on. So for example, you're working on a new app and you want to create just a project about it, or you want to do it for a department of your company. So what I mean by this is the fact that, for example, in a company, you have a marketing department So you can imagine that marketing is taking care about, your brand, like what is your communication and all that. So you can create just a project about communication and marketing. That works. So there is different ways to look at the project, but this is a logic that is coming from you. So this is all for the intro about what I wanted to say about like projects and memories. Now, the question is, what do you do if you start from fresh, right? Because this is also why we're here. And so I just want to show you this. What do you do if you start from fresh? Let's imagine that, I'm here. And basically, there is different way that you can start, whether you can start from ChatGPT or whether you can start from here, or whether you have not used AI before. And I'm going to show you the three ways. Okay. So if I explain to you what we're going to do, and that way it's going to be more simpler to get, is that so here there is three ways to start. One, you start from scratch. Okay, and I'm going to show you that first. Two, you already used ChatGPT, for example. So this is where we're going to start from. Okay. So this is the first two things that we're going to view. And then third, what we're going to view, how to set up memory and projects based on where you're coming from. Okay. So this is the three things that we're going to look at. And to be able to do that, I'm going to do exactly the same, which means that I'm going to start from scratch. Okay. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to, can I log out? I'm going to show you like what it will look like if I was starting from scratch. Okay. So I'm going to start a new Cowork. The thing that you have to do, I'm going to show you like if I was starting from ChatGPT. So if I go to ChatGPT, I'm going to share you my screen. So here, as you can see, I'm in ChatGPT, right? I'm going to go to here to my settings. And in my settings, I forgot what it is. In data control, you can basically export your data. Okay. So you confirm the export. I get a code that is sent to me. Where's the code? Okay, so I got the code from ChatGPT. Continue. Okay, I got it. I confirm the export. Again, which is not at all annoying because I just did it. Okay, I'm gonna try again. Okay. I feel I'm stuck in the loop. So just let me do this in another type of in here. This is perfect because you see exactly how it works. So you go to your settings again, you go to data control, you export, You confirm the export. Hope he's not going to ask me for another. Okay. So you will receive an email with the details, right? While we are waiting for that, I'm going to show you what will be happening if I was starting from scratch. Okay. So if I was starting from scratch, obviously you will get nothing here. So just to give you the idea, we're going to log out. We're going to get started. We're going to continue with Google. We're going to continue. I'm going to use another account, and I'm going to use this account. Up. Check my device. Just give me a second, because I'm showing you like really from scratch. Okay, I agree. I don't want to receive promotion email. I want to give my birthday, 1983. Continue. And right now I'm going to use Claude for free. Okay, so I'm going to continue. What's your name? Phil. I'm going to Phil demo. Continue. I can select my role. This is mainly for them, so this is doesn't change much. But input operations. Okay, so let's imagine that I start from scratch, right? So as you can see here, I have no chat. I go here, I go to settings. As I said to you, you have a memory, generate memory from scratch, okay? From the chat. Here, why you can't see like look at history, it's because I'm not paying for it. Okay, so I will show you, even if I pay for it and all that, like what it will do. So if I start from scratch, and the first thing I will ask it to do, because what is really important to understand is that the memory basically is also part of the context that you're giving, right? So you don't want to go each time from the beginning, okay, this is who I am, this is what I do, anything like this. So there is a small prompt that you can use, and I will give you this prompt. There is absolutely no problem. So I want you to set up what you permanently know about me, and I want you to get it by interviewing me properly. So there is one thing that is really important when you use an AI, is that you don't know how to speak the language of AI. So instead of trying to make it up, instead of trying to make it because this is what you have seen online and everything, the best way is always to work in the way that you're asking the AI to interview you, or asking the AI to do it for you, or to tell you how to do it. Okay? So this is why I'm asking here to interview me properly. So here I'm going to say also how it should react. So at the same time, I am telling you how to prompt. Ask me one question at a time and wait for my answer before the next one, obviously. Do not give me a full list of questions. So it's always good to say what you want it to do as a reaction, but also like what you don't want it to do. I want you to cover who I am. So who I am and what I actually do all day. What is my business and my work? Who are my customers? Or I serve? What I'm building? The projects I'm working on, personal interest, how I like to work, what are my interests, hobbies, So you can really go far away, right? And ask follow-up question when my answers are vague, when you have enough, show me a draft. Okay? And you don't have to use like Opus 5 for that. You don't have to use like a really complex model. Even using something like Sonnet 4.6 will be largely enough. Like for this, like we're going to use Sonnet 5. Okay? So we're going to go through that. So as you can see, instead of me trying to say like everything that I know about myself, I'm going like in the way that I'm going to let interview me. Okay? And you can build those kind of things for anybody. Okay? So that's the cool thing about the way that you can prompt at the same time. Prompting, and I will maybe spend like just a full hour on that, but basically like the prompting is everything that you should know, like the way you build it. So what is my name? I'll say like Phil. What do you do? I am a solo business owner of an enterprise that is called Heroes Global Venture, and I work as a consultant for companies in product management, business strategy, and AI. Okay, so that's the first question I answer, right? What do I do? Basically, who do I work for? What is my company? So work me through Heroes Global Venture a bit more. Is consulting the whole business, or are there any arms product under the name? And so obviously I can explain. So Heroes Global Venture is my company. And because I don't like to write, I have whisper flow, so I'm going to say that everything by dictation, right? And the company, I work in partially as a consultant for large businesses. I work also for companies as a teacher, freelancer, so which means that I have trainings that I do around AI in product management that I do for businesses, or that I give that directly to certain people, for example, in the UK. I also have multiple products that I'm developing for myself, which is, for example, I have Breakthrough, which is one of the products that I'm developing. And also I'm developing a knowledge base and the layer of intelligence in between to be able to be a system that compound the intelligence of someone and is helping businesses go faster. And finally, I have a community around AI where I want to teach people how to use AI and how to get the most out of it. So you see, look, I said quite quickly, what he's doing. Obviously, because I'm using, Whisper. I'm just saying what it's. I'm just correcting, and then I'm sending it again. Okay. If you have any question, by the way, I see that you're here in the chat, and thank you for everybody that is coming. I don't understand necessarily your name in there, but thank you so much for being there. If you have any question, please ask me, and I will get them because I can see the chat. So you see that as I go through, it's gonna ask me more and more questions. Okay, so for example, let's dig into Breakthrough first, what it is and everything. And I could say here, I could stop and I could say like, based on what you know right now, I don't want any more question. Just give me what should I put in the memory in the settings, right? So I could go like super simple, I stop it there because I just want to go. This is what it gives me. Okay, so this is super simple. From there, here is what actually is. So Phil, solo business owner, work as a consultant for companies, consultant for large businesses, also work as a teacher, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I could just take this. Super simple. I go here to my settings. I go to the memory. And here, right? I could just basically say that. You can see that he has already put some stuff because he's building as we go, because I put that here. But at any moment, you can change, right? So this is how you can put that in the memory. Okay, so that's the first step. So this is if you go from scratch. So as you can see, it's here. As you can see, it's here. At any moment, you can change the memory. Okay, let's imagine that he put you that as a memory. So what did you keep as in your memory about me? Right? We keep the same question. He says to you this. So basically that you're a consulting for large business, training, freelancing, teaching AI plus product management, the free product in development. You can say, for example, I want you to update the memory and delete the mention of breakthrough. Instead, I want it to replace by a project called, I don't know, Studio, which is a platform to be able to develop without having to choose a model. I don't know, an AI model. Okay, just for a description, like I don't know. I'm just like inventing, creating at the same time. So here it is. So you see, like exactly the same way I was asking the question, I can at any moment look at what's inside the memory and say, this is what I want you to replace. Okay, so you can update that anytime you want. If we go back in the settings, you will see that the profile is still the same. You will see that here, the breakthrough is gone, and now Studio is in. This, you can do that in Claude. You can do that in ChatGPT. Both of them works exactly the same way. Now, this is if you start from scratch. Okay? Let's imagine that you have, and let me check if I received it. I hope I received it. That would be awesome. Yes. We have started preparing your data export. This process may take a few days. That's not good. I should have prepared that before. I think I have an export that I did in Claude. So let me have a look. Let me have a look. No. I don't have it. Test export data. What is this? Let me just check something. Okay, perfect. Here I have something that I which I don't remember what it is. So this is like we were here, like we start from scratch. So basically from scratch, we have to say the things one by one. Okay, we have to say like basically who we are, where do we start, and all that. So you can obviously add from the chat, as I said, you can remove from the chat. This is exactly a decision. So this is basically how you can update the memory. Now, the question is that if you have already a memory somewhere and you want to transfer that to where you are, this is where it becomes interesting, because you have two ways to do that. There is one way that I don't particularly like it, which is basically going to the settings, you go to memory and you start an import. Okay, here it's going to tell you export all my stored memory and any context you've learned about me from past conversation and all that. The problem with that is that basically the way it's telling you to do that is that it's telling you to prompt another model. What is going to happen there is that it's based on what is inside its memory. And as I said to you, if you haven't validated that, you don't know what is inside the memory because you don't control it. This is why I don't like it. The way I prefer to do that is basically do an export. Once you have an export, you have a file. Just give me a second, which is here. Oops. It's here. I will take this zip file. I will put it here. Now it will upload. And I will say here, really simply, right? I will say this. I want you to go through the zip file attached, which contain all the conversation and memory I had in another provider. You can say ChatGPT. Generally, you can taunt them and rage bait a little bit Claude with ChatGPT. It works quite well. From there, I want you to analyze the different conversation and tell me who I am, what I am working on, what I am building, the different projects I am working on. Okay? Super simple. You can go a bit further. You can say, what patterns do you see that I may not have noticed? Okay, you use the AI to be able to analyze for you. Okay, you don't have to do it. That's a cool thing. You can have like 2 years of ChatGPT if you want. Claude will have more capability than you to find insights, to find relationship, to find things that you may not have seen. However, you have used it. Okay? So this is how I'm using it. And so here I will say to finally, give me what should go into your memory as a first step. Okay? Here we go. And I hope it's the right data because I don't know where is this data coming from. So that is going to be interesting. 11 August. Huh. We'll see. So potentially mine is coming from something else, which is going to be interesting. Okay. Okay, so here it is, right? Who are you, senior PM CPO? So I didn't use, obviously, ChatGPT in quite a long time, but this is what is coming out, right? Build one methodology and reuse it as an infrastructure everywhere. You said it's done versus it's not done. You see like different things. So what I've said in memory, it tells you what he has saved in memory. So that's the difference between starting from scratch and basically what you already use. This is already giving everything. Now, the question is, how do we go a step further where, as I was saying to you, the problem that you have is that we need to discuss about how you need to work, which is completely different from setting up your account. Okay? The second layer to setting up your account is setting up your projects. Okay? What you have to understand, and we're going to go back at the beginning, is that why I like to use basically projects, and this is super important, is that when you have a chat, just give me a second, I'm going to show that again. When you have a chat, you have to understand that this is the memory which is the memory of a context window of a chat. Oops. So the context window, just to let you know, just give me a second. I'm going to make it better. The context window is basically how many tokens you have to work on when you're starting a chat. Okay? So in Claude, it's 1 million token. Now, a token is not necessarily a word, is not necessarily a number of letters. Okay, if you want to know like how tokens are, like what is the tokens and all that, like you can go, for example, to something like this, which is an AI token calculator, and basically what you can view from there, I'm going to give it in the chat, is that, for example, if I take here this full sentence that is here, right, in Claude, that is explaining to me like who I am and all that, which I don't know how many words it is. This is 4,000 characters, 639 words, and this is 966 input token and 194 output token. Okay, so when you imagine that you have 1 million token, okay, here it's approximately, like you see as input token 1,000. So it's 1,000 times this, 1,000 times this text. Okay, this is why the more you discuss inside a chat, the more you're going to use this context window. But you have to understand one thing. Each time you start a chat, right, from the beginning, you don't get 1 million token. There is part of it that is used here by the memory. Okay? There is then what is used by the context, which means files, which means instructions, and other things that I will explain later. But basically, this is what you start with. Okay? So in reality, when you have a chat, and you have a chat that is approximately 1 million token at the beginning, you are already one part that is used. Not that much, but there is already one part that is used. Then after that, obviously, there is your instruction, and there is the prompt that you give, right? So depending on how large is the prompt and what is the files that you give. So for example, here, when I ask this question, I give this zip, and this zip file was like 62 meg plus this. So this is a number of token I'm using on top of a memory that was already inside the chat. Yeah? So suddenly what it means is that what you have to use is basically the rest. So this is your conversation. Now you have to understand something. Approximately arriving at the middle, so at 50%, and this is papers that are coming from Anthropic, from Claude and all that. This is what they're saying, is that you have, oops, this is so bad. Sorry about this. The performance is going down. The more you use, the more you go here, right? You can imagine that it goes more and more like this, right? Why? There is a simple reason. What you have to understand about how a little bit like, and I'm gonna try to stay like at a high level when I say that. The AI model, to be able to answer your question, is doing relation between the tokens. Okay? It doesn't, for example, an AI model doesn't understand what is an image. An image is a set of vectors. Okay? And it has like, it has like different, those vectors like go This is already understood in the model. And basically what it's trying to do is capable to understand, okay, like this goes with this goes with this. And so this is what is expected. And based on the transformer and all that and the probability that is coming out, this is what is expected. So the more you charge inside the token, the harder it is to make those relation between the tokens, right? That's exactly why the performance is going down the more you're filling in this context window. This is why at a certain point, it's better to stop at any moment, right? Let's say, for example, here, and to take this, take an output, right? And to start a new chat. And the new chat, you will start again with 1 million token. Minus, obviously, what is inside the memory, minus 1,000 instruction and all that, like the same way that it works above. Okay? Why using projects? The cool thing with projects is that, as I said to you, when you are putting a project, you come with here. So this will be memory of the project only. And here will be instruction plus context and files of a project. Okay? And since, if we go back, sorry, I was showing this. And since, like, as we said here, a project is like a container, you're basically already specializing your chat. So, for example, when I talk about marketing, I'm not looking, for example, at my clients. I'm not looking at what I'm doing in AI training. I'm not looking at, I don't know, for example, LinkedIn, or I know this is marketing, so I'm looking at LinkedIn, sorry. I'm not looking at my operation or my finances. Okay? The project, because it's a container, it's almost like you're only specializing for what you want to work. Okay? So this is why it's important also to set up projects. And to set up the projects, it's exactly what we did here. So what we want to do, you see, like, projects are here. I can start a new project whenever I want, right? But instead of starting a project from scratch and saying, okay, I want to start a project, but I don't know what it's about. So I'm going to start a project and I'm going to say, I want to start a project, but it's called marketing. What I'm trying to achieve, I don't know, like, I want to be able to expand my reach and improve my brand and my distribution, right? You're trying to make it up, but you don't know exactly. You're not sure about what you do. Distribution, okay? And you create the project. You see the project that it's here. You see that you can start in chat or Cowork. You don't know exactly what to do, and then here you have instruction, but you can say some instruction, and then here you have some context. Okay. Problem is that if you start like that, and it could be a good way, you're like, I'm starting from scratch. So again, I need to ask myself a question and everything about what I should do. Now, there is another ways to do it, which is we come back here to basically our memory and our chat that we have here. We say, based on the conversation and the full analysis that you did, I want you to tell me the projects I should create inside my Claude environment. And I want you, for each project, to give me the first memory I should put in the first chat for this project. And also, I want you to give me a set of instruction that I will copy. Okay, so here what I'm doing is that instead of me having to go from scratch and imagining which project I should create, how I should set it up, how, what is the best way, what is the best environment I could create and everything, what I'm doing is that I'm basically asking, based on the memory I gave it, to do it for me. Okay? If you don't have this memory, there is still the first solution to do, right? Which is because here, like if I tell a lot about myself, he should be capable to tell me the first project I should start with. Okay? But so let's do from the export chat that we have, and we're going to see like the result that we're going to get. The way I use the model is always, and I'm gonna re-explain that after, but it's basically what I want to do here is I want to set up this project with a memory, context, and instruction, so that way the way I start the chat, it's always in this logic container. So which means that in the memory I'm using, it's only taking the memory of a project, the instruction and context of a project. It's not taking something else. Okay, so which means that this window will always be based on my project. So while it's doing that, okay, so it's creating the Claude projects, as you can see. Okay, Claude project setup, right? 6 core project to set up, breakthrough the Forge, Protecting Dragon, Bootcamp Core, Builder, Lotto, Budget World. Okay, and then there is 6 secondary one to add as needed, plus an optional crosswork Scream Lab. As you can see here, I can see the Claude project. It gives me my first memory, and then it gives me the project instruction. So if we go through that, also founder of Breakthrough, an AI memory layer, not a capture app, positioning the AI that remembers what you meant to do with your thinking, free intent mode, at launch, follow up, surface open loop, connect the dots, just hold it, right? It states the stack and all that. This is a dev project. It tells you the workflow and everything. Then it tells you the role instruction. So in the project, you see the instruction is almost like a prompt. It always gives the role, it always gives the rules, it always gives what you should do, what you should not do. So here it says the role, strategic architectural thinking partner for Breakthrough. It's the execution layer is in Claude code, this project scope and reviews, it doesn't write production code, right? So here what I'm doing is that I'm using the memory from another provider. I'm using the capability of Claude to do the analysis. From this analysis, I'm asking it to build for me what is the best instruction for each one of my projects. Okay, so then if I want to create a project, I will take this, I will copy, I will create my first project, or let's take this one, for example. I will create my first project, but it's called the Forge. I will go here, call it the Forge. I will create the project. In the instruction, I will add the instruction. I will save this instruction. Okay, I continue. I take the first memory. I go here and I say, this is what I'm working on. That's it. That's what you have to do. And from that moment, you can start working, for example, in this project, and you will always like, stay in that container, and you will not look at the rest. Now, there is other things that you can do, like, for example, adding files. So you can upload from your computer anything that you want. If you're in Cowork, you can give access to a folder. So, for example, I could go to any one of my folder. I could go to, for example, the Forge Lab, and I could say, I want to get, for example, this transcript and this PDF. Okay, and this will always be part of the context, the memory that will be loaded inside the chat. Now, you have to be careful that, obviously, because of a space that you have, you're not adding too much stuff that are basically useless, right? So you need to only use what is absolutely necessary and nothing else. Okay, so here, even that the cool thing is now that they show like the project capacity in terms of context, right? So generally, the context, don't use it too much. I prefer to connect a folder, for example, in Cowork, use essentially the instruction, and then after that, go in the chat directly. This is what I will say for that. And so, I'm gonna stop sharing. So this is basically the, this is basically the beginning of, using Claude, on how you should set it up. And so why I'm using it like that, as I said to you, is because, first of all, I have control over the instruction. The instruction, you can update them as you go through your project. You can ask Claude to update your instruction. You can update your memory whenever you want, which is quite practical. The fact that it acts as containers, but at the same time, the memory is still flexible, is not necessarily as ChatGPT, like whether putting on the default memory or putting on the project memory is the project memory. So which means that you can update it the way you want. This is also super useful. And then finally, the fact that you have whether chat on the cloud or whether Cowork where you can access your file gives you another layer inside that. Okay? So, it was my flatmate. So, try to understand, obviously, these different layers, right? Now, I just want to show you one thing, and I will answer the question. I told you, obviously, about the memory and how it is limited in time, and the fact that basically any model becomes dumber the more you stay inside the chat. What happens is that after that, it tries to compress the context and continue, which is not a good thing. One of the bad things you can do to handle that is that if the chat starts to be too long, is that you give a simple command, is that give me an handoff so I can start a new chat with a fresh context, and I can continue from where we were. Okay? So basically, by asking an handoff like this allows, at this moment, you're going to see it's going to create me a file, or it's going to create me like, directly a prompt that I can reuse. And this handoff, I'm not showing you, sorry about this. So you see it's creating this handoff. And from that moment, I can take this handoff, give me a handoff so I can start a new chat, right? I can take this handoff and start from there. That's a way to counter basically the problem of memory and the limitation that you're having there, and the fact that it becomes dumber as it goes. Okay? I'm going to take the questions now. So let me just read this. What if someone has been using Claude for a while? Would they say, based on what you know about me, tell me which project I should create, give me the instruction, etc., not starting from scratch? Yes. So what you can do, even if you are in Claude, is that you can export, but you can export everything from Claude. There is absolutely no problem, right? Is that you basically go there, you go. I'm going to show you, like, it works whether you're in the same thing. And this is something I do often, because it's normal that as you grow your business, or as you grow yourself, or as you grow your role, your what you're doing change. So at any moment, I can go to I think it's in privacy, and you can export data. So here what you can do is exactly what I did, but you can do it from Claude. So you export the data, you will get a zip file that arrive on your computer, and from the zip file you give it back to Claude in a new project or in a new chat, and you do exactly what I did. This is good because, as I said to you, the more you're using it, and I really advise to put everything in it. The more you're using it, the more you're gonna see patterns, and you're gonna see like problems that you have and everything. And so it's a good way sometimes to have an external point of view that looks at the way you work and is capable to say like, this is how you should, for example, structure your work, or this is how you should do, like, for example, X, Y, or Z. It's important also that everything it says, you don't have to accept. You can also change. You can also do grouping that are totally different, right? I could say, for example, all my clients, I want them around the agency. That way, because I'm doing approximately the same offering for them. And so I don't want to have like to separate in project. I want to be capable to talk about this offering across my projects. Yeah. This is why if, for example, I show you my projects, which are totally different, at the beginning, I had like something like 12 projects, I think, at the beginning. But I'm going to show you this. Just give me a second. I'm going to connect to it. Starting to get dark. Light. Okay. Just give me a second. So if I connect, I'm going to show you my projects. Okay. So let me show you here. My entire screen. Okay, so this is all my projects that I've created, right? I didn't archive anything and all that. Like at the beginning, it's like product leadership work. Then I went, to a different side. I went to some clients. I did clients directly, personal OS, other clients that were showing up and all that. And then I was like, I need to change that because this doesn't work in the way I work. Because as I said to you, very certain clients that were that for me were basically having the same offering, or I was taking care about the same thing. And this is why it changed totally. And now in projects, where are they? Where are my projects? Change them again. This is not good. Basically my projects, which are supposed to be there, but I see that he lost it. This is weird because it doesn't contain my projects that are here normally, which means that is missing some. How can I show you this? This happens a lot when you're restarting. Basically, I have like, I think 6 or 7 projects, right? I have a project that is the lab. I have a project that I call traction. I have a project that I call trainings. I have a project that I call community, which is around everything around my community. So yeah, I have approximately 7 projects that I use, which for me represent my business. And it also, I'm capable to do that because I built my own memory layer that is separated from what is inside Cowork. So, which is something that you can see basically here, which is my own memory layer and all that. So yeah, that's how I did it. Is there any other question for me? No? Good. Amazing. So this will be available on my channel. So if you wanna watch it back, basically this is how I set up the projects and how I set up and use the memory. Next week there's going to be another one, potentially on Tuesday instead of Wednesday. I will post it directly on my channel. I post it also on LinkedIn and on X if you want to know anything. just let me know in the comments. Super happy to answer you. If you want to follow me, or if you want to have access to prompts and things like that, you can go to my newsletter, or you can just look in my description. It says everything. So thank you so much for showing up. I appreciate that. You're all awesome. And start building, and start making Claude your own, because once it's your own, it's really amazing. It's really amazing. Once you create your own project, you create your own memory, you create your own instruction, it really gives you what you want. Okay, so use Claude to help you parameter it, configure it. Remember that what you don't know, Claude knows how to do it, because he knows how it works. Okay, so thank you so much. Enjoy your evening, and see you next week. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.